All right. Well, welcome, ladies. It's good to see everybody on here today. This is a great conversation. I'm so excited. I'm actually here to learn as much as I possibly can from these fabulous ladies. So I can't wait to get started. I just want to take care of a few things for housekeeping purposes and also some announcements for NABO so everyone stays up to date. So let me go through our sponsors quickly. Amanda, do you have the graphic we can pull up?
Yeah, sure. Let me just share my screen really quick. Oh. There you go. Is everyone able to see that?
There we go. Perfect. Okay, so our founding partners are Chase Bank and Spalding University, and our other sponsors, GLI, Chenault Solutions, Abacus Louisville, Tops Louisville, Ameriprise Financial, Abney and Abney Associates, MCM CPAs and Advisors, Simtech, Splendid Events, Nest Community Marketing, Today's Woman, Pella, Sinorama Downtown, PNC Bank, KCTCS Supplier Diversity, L&D Mailmasters, and Harding Szymanski and Company. We cannot do any of this without our sponsors, and we thank you for supporting women business owners and women business professionals in this community. Also, I would like to just bring your attention. We have a couple of recurring events that we have on the calendar for our local NABO Kentucky chapter. The first one is every first Wednesday of the month, we have our celebration circle, and that's an event where we just get together, talk about what's going on, support each other. And that is at 4 p.m. the first Wednesday of every month. That is hosted by our very own Laura Leeton, who is our president-elect. And then our Lunch and Learn series, which is what we're doing today, is the second Tuesday of every month from 11:30 to 1. And our program committee, Linda and Sharon, they're coming up with some fabulous material for our members. So be sure to tune in every month. We have our Grow program, which is it's our educational series that we do. It's a tuition-based program to support women business owners that are starting out and that are trying to get their businesses going off the ground and, kind of take you over that pivotal hump so that you are successful. And it is a fabulous program that is going to be starting up in the second quarter. So stay tuned for more information on that. We'll be sending that out here shortly. And then also, I just want to make you guys aware, National has some fabulous programming. And as a NABO member, you have access to all of their virtual programming as well, which is currently free. So they have great speakers. They have a weekly lunch and learn on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, I think it's from 12 to 1. And then they have a weekly connect call from women all across the country, which is, this is a virtual world. You can meet and network and do business with women everywhere, men too. And so this is a great way to expand your network into other parts of the country. So that is every Wednesday, and that is a networking call. So we have a lot of those on our calendar, so you can jump there and register for those events. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers today, and then I will turn it over to Linda. So our speakers today are Linda Ruffenach, who is on our NABO board. She's also does all of our programming, and she is owner of Linda, you're going to kill me. Execuity Value Advisors and Whiskey Chicks. And then Shanda, is it Shanda or Shanda?
Shanda.
Shanda
Yep.
McFadden, an experienced former commercial banker and financial advisor based out of Chicago. So they're going to share the importance of exit planning. Both are certified exit planners who work together to help business owners accelerate the value of their business and convert that value into personal wealth. Great topic. So with that, Linda, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you. Give me just a second. I'll share the right screen. All right. So, thank you for allowing us once again. I feel a little self-fulfilling being the head of programming and actually having a hosting one of these, but I thought that, after talking to different people on the board, thought that this was a really good topic because it's something a lot of people don't talk about in businesses. We're always talking about how do we grow our business and, how do we keep the business going and that type of thing. But a lot of times we don't talk about the exit. We don't talk about what's going to happen down the road. And, what I've discovered in going through the whole exit planning process and getting certified in it is the fact that it's much easier to plan ahead than plan at the end, and to react to things towards the end of the time when you're wanting to leave your business. If you're able to think about the end in mind when you're building your business, you're going to get a much happier ending than if you wait until you're about a year or two out. And some companies just wait till the last year to go, oh, you know what, I'm ready to leave my business. I'm sure I can get a great price for it. And you look at this last year, and we've learned a lot about resilience this last year, and we've all dealt with a lot of the unexpected things, and none of us could have predicted the challenges that we have experienced. And as you've probably seen a lot of the headlines, women have been the most adversely impacted by that. And a lot of that has to do with the industries that we're in. But we've taken a big hit. And then you look at Black-owned businesses, and they're down 41% from February to April. They've actually, due to the shutdown. And that's a huge number. Think about 41% of Black-owned businesses have shut down in the last year. And, for women, we're spending a lot of time taking care of a lot of other things. So when you look at that, we're spending on average 7 more hours per week than men taking care of child care, and 5 more hours per week taking care of the elderly. And I know for myself, and I'm sure a few of you on here have faced challenges you never expected you would have to go through. And also that a lot of that can come and create some financial challenges for us. And part of it is today we're going to talk about the importance of planning. Now, no one can really plan for COVID, but there are a lot of defensive things you can do ahead of time that prepare you to at least anticipate where some of these challenges might come in. And think about planning for your business, planning for retirement, preparing your business to face those unexpected and the inevitable things that you're going to lay ahead.
Thank you again for the introduction earlier, Sarah. Linda, thank you for inviting me to join the group this morning, and for all on the call, thank you for the opportunity. So as Sarah mentioned, my name is Shanda. I'm a financial advisor in Chicago. I actually live in Northwest Indiana, though, about 35 miles outside of Chicago. Born and raised in Indiana, and went to school down in Southern Indiana, so very familiar with the area. And again, thank you for your warm welcome this morning. I want to walk you really quickly through the agenda that we'll cover today. So first, we're going to talk to you about this idea of total world domination, what it means to you, how you attain it. And then we're going to talk about some of the real world events that put that total world domination at risk. And we call those the 5 Ds. We're going to talk about a personal financial statement and personal balance sheet. We're going to understand the value of your business, and then talk a little bit about protecting your legacy. Whenever I talk about some of these concepts, it's always easier for me to use real life examples. So we're going to introduce you to a beautiful woman, Carla, who we've met, and we'll use her case to kind of walk us through the presentation this morning. So at 24, Carla was a single parent. She decided to go back to school and major in business. After graduation, she found it difficult to find a job, but was faced with the reality of raising a child on her own, and student loans that come back to haunt us as soon as possible, it seems like. She took a job cleaning up a construction site, which was fine for her at the time because she was desperate, but it also gave her the opportunity to work with another female owner of this construction company. She was very impressed with Carla's work ethic. She was very impressed with her ability to keep up with the guys on the site, and gave her an opportunity to work in a more operational and administrative role with the organization. Over the next 9 years, she learned everything that she could about the industry, about the business, and really fell in love with the work, and found that she was really good at project management. When the owner eventually decided to sell her business, Carla decided that it was time to invest in herself again. And so she started her own company. Now she can say 10 years later that she's running a successful business with over $2 million in revenue. About 2 years ago, Carla went through a nasty divorce that resulted in her ex-husband being awarded half of her assets. That included her cash as well as retirement assets. It almost cost her the loss to lose her business, but she was able to recover from that. She's considering selling her business at this point. She believes that the proceeds will cover the cost. Now with 2 children, she has 2 children now, an adult son living on his own, and then a daughter who's a senior in high school. The daughter wants to go to a private college with tuition closer to $50,000 a year. Carla wants to sell her business and expects the proceeds to cover the cost of that tuition, to fund her retirement, as well as provide her startup capital for anything that she wants to do in that second phase of her life. Is she right? Will the company actually net her enough to do that? We'll explore that in more detail throughout this presentation.
So one of the things that Carla's like a lot of us, we spent our life taking care of everybody else around us. And I'm sure there's many of you that can relate to this. First she took care of her son, then she took care of her husband, her daughter, her aging parents, as a business owner, her employees. And every day she wakes up thinking about, how do I take care of these individuals in my life? And when COVID hit, her number one concern was all of them. And particularly in her business, she was very concerned about the 8 people that worked for her and their families. And when her business came to a screeching halt, she actually decided, you know what? I don't feel right taking a paycheck when I'm asking other people to cut back their hours and to do things like that. So she decided to stop taking a paycheck and really spend and take that money and redirect it towards the employees that she already had. Business kind of came to a halt. She wasn't sure what she was going to do. And unfortunately, during that time, she decided she needed to let 2 of those people go, which was a really hard decision for her. And it's something that weighed on her very heavily. And, she started spending every waking minute worrying about, what do I have to do about my business? How do I take care of homeschooling for my daughter? And money became a huge issue for her. And when she was thinking about it, part of it is she kind of kept reflecting back on this Act 2. And she's thinking to herself, Act 2 can't come fast enough because I'm really tired. I don't feel like I have the freedom to do the things that I want. And this is just a really heavy load to be carrying. And part of it is she actually took part of her savings account and started to put that back into the business. She had actually considered taking money out of her 401k before the PPP loans came out, and doing everything she could to keep her business running. But the good news is business has started to pick back up when she's got several new opportunities in the pipeline that she feels is going to help keep her and her remaining team intact and unaffected. But she's still working harder than she ever did in her business. And she hasn't worked this hard since the first 2 years of her business. She's spending 60, 70 hours a day just working. And still, once again, she's not taking any money for it. She's not taking a salary. And, the story of Carla kind of helps describe what many of us as women tend to do, is we take care of everyone else first. We forget to take oxygen for ourselves. And you can kind of see it on little things and also on big things, which is, sometimes we take on the responsibility of everybody else. We may be the first to give up that last piece of pie, even though we want it. But if everybody else can split it or share it, we're going to give it away. Or maybe recently, as you kind of go through Christmas, you're the one worrying about everybody getting the same number of Christmas presents under the tree. And maybe you don't get your stocking like everybody else did because you were busy filling theirs. Or taking on virtual learning. And I know for myself, taking that on has been a huge task. Or in Carla's case, not paying yourself for the work that you're doing and not taking money off the table to take care of you and your future. And this is really true during the pandemic. And, women on average are spending 7 hours more per week managing childcare and 5 hours more per week taking care of the sick. And when it comes to money, that's an even bigger problem.
And it always is, Linda. Money is always a bigger problem. For every dollar in wealth held by a man, women only have 32 cents. For African American women, that figure is more like 6 cents on the dollar, which is a very disturbing statistic, but we understand why it happens. As business owners, we are less likely to pull money out of our business for ourselves, and even less likely to plan for our own retirement. Most business owners believe they can fund their full retirement by selling their business, yet they've done very little to prepare for that. I saw this trend firsthand as I was as a commercial banker, and I see it even more now as a financial advisor. We have to disrupt this trend, and that's what drives my work. It's also what led me to meet Linda and stay connected with her throughout this time. My passion and my purpose is to fill the wealth gap for minority and women-owned businesses. After nearly 20 years of working in this space, I know firsthand the challenges these companies face, from access to capital to access to customers. When I transitioned to financial advising, I did so because it was a way for me to work more holistically with business owners and a way for me to collaborate with other advisors in the space. I pursued my Certified Exit Planning Advisor certification, the CEPA certification, and met Linda there. Linda and I have worked together over the last year, getting to know one another and helping several clients. She brings passion to the table, as you all know, and is she's very passionate about filling the wealth gap and brings a complementary skill set to the table. As you know, she's grown and exited her own successful company. She's been there and done that. She has the ability to jump into a business, learn the culture of that company, understand the strengths, and look for opportunities to increase the value. She, like myself, is equally committed to finding the correct support and resources for businesses looking to grow and or exit their companies. We are working to build a community of business owners that are open and willing to share real life stories of their failures, growth, and pivots. And we collaborate and help, as we've said, in the kind of the purpose of the whole presentation is we collaborate on helping business owners maximize the value of their businesses and convert that value to personal wealth.
So, and Shanda, thank you so much. And I promise I did not write that for myself. She actually wrote that, not me. But equally, I share the same passion that Shanda does about filling that wage gap, and was very fortunate to be able to meet Shanda through this experience and recognizing that when it comes to managing wealth and getting to achieve that total world domination, it's a holistic picture. And you need to be looking at both your personal wealth and your business wealth. You know, it's interesting, 76% of business owners actually plan to transition their business in the next 10 years. But here's the startling part. Less than half of them have done nothing to prepare. They don't know what levers to pull. They have no idea what their value is worth. They're not ready to make those changes, even though 10 years may seem like a long time, but it's never too soon to start planning. And the reason for that is that 3 out of 4 business owners actually profoundly regret selling their business 1 year later. And when I heard this stat, I was really shocked by it, because I have this image of selling your business and being ecstatic and walking away with this big check and actually being able to live those dreams. And even as we started the conversation today, being able to pursue those adventures that we talked about being able to go to the Amalfi Coast, being able to go hang out in the Keys, all of those things. But there's 2 big reasons why business owners regret selling their business. The first one was they're unhappy with the purchase price. And a couple things come from that. Business owners overvalue their business. It's like your child. Your child can do no wrong. And my child is beautiful. I can criticize it, but no one else can. And it's worth, that they basically hung the moon. In your business, a lot of times we think our businesses are worth a lot more than we think. And even when we get the price that we have mentally in our head, so let's say you believe you want to sell your business for $1 million, and you begin thinking and planning, what you didn't realize and maybe hadn't thought through is dependent on how you set up your structures from a tax standpoint, whether you had to use a business broker into this, you brought an attorney into this, you had different things that had to go into prepping it. $1 million sale may only net you about $300,000 at the end of the day when it all adds up. And $300,000, when you look at it from your financial plan, may not be enough to help you get to that next phase of your life. The second thing is that we don't plan for what that second act looks like. You know, sometimes, you know, we all have that image of, I'd love to be able to lay on the beach and relax and, you know, live in that place that we fantasize living about. But then we get there and we realize this is great for a couple of weeks, but at the end of those couple of weeks, we're kind of like, okay, now what do I do? And that's what happens to a lot of business owners. It's very difficult to go from owning a business, working 40, 60, 70 hours a week to then all of a sudden not having anything to do. And part of that is because you didn't plan for it. And that's what causes the regret for many business owners.
So what do? We've presented all the things we know, the fears, the anxiety. What do we do next? So let's jump right into it. The first thing I do when I connect with my clients is I ask them to define a world that that is intentionally harmonious space with personal, financial, and their business plans. What does that alignment look like for you? So if we could really quickly do a short exercise, I would love for you to take the time to spell out what total world domination looks like for you when your personal, financial, and your business plans are all working together. So jot down a few words that answer the questions. What are big headlines for your business? What are big headlines for your family, for your life? What is your why? What legacy do you want to leave for yourself and for your business? And how do you see yourself in retirement? If you could take the next few minutes just to jot those down. And if there's any you want to share in the chat, I'd love to see them. And as they say in applications, this page is intentionally blank. You will undoubtedly have to spend some time on this after the meeting today. But as you continue that, I'd love to show you a little bit of what Carla's idea of total world domination is all about. And surprise, is all about Carla. For most of her life, as Linda mentioned, she's raised her children, she's cared for her husband, she's worried about her employees and their families, and she started and grew a successful business. So now total world domination allows Carla to travel more consistently, pursue her passion for photography, while still managing a business today and a future business once she enters Act 2 of her life.
You know, kind of going into the next thing. So now Carla's figured out what total world domination looks like for her, but what are the other things that she needs to be thinking about? And I kind of go back to why you started your business. You know, a lot of people start their business because they want to have freedom. They want to be able to choose their own destiny. They don't want to work for somebody else, that they want to be able to choose how they spend their day and the work that they do and have that flexibility. And one of those things include how you exit your business and when you exit your business. But here's the reality is the big challenge is life doesn't always go the way that you want it. This last year has really taught all of us that. And that 50%, that's half of businesses transition unexpectedly. And you can narrow that all down to the 5 Ds.
And as a commercial banker, and I'm sure Benny has some experience with some of this as well, it sounds like, you know, I've had experience with quite a few of these. And the first being death, which is one that's inevitable. We all face it, but it seems to be the one area where we do where we see a lot less planning. I had a client that was ran by 4 gentlemen. 51% of that company was owned by a Hispanic male. The other 49% was owned equally by 3 white men. Because of the majority ownership, the company was able to take advantage of MBE and DBE contracts. So those are minority business enterprise and disadvantaged business enterprise contracts. The majority owner suddenly passed away over the winter holiday a couple of years back. The owners had a buy-sell agreement in place, which is a succession planning document that's seen pretty often in partnerships. But like many of those that I've seen, it wasn't funded and it was pretty old and needed to be, updated. The wife, the surviving spouse, did not have a relationship with the other business owners, didn't have a lot of trust there, and was not helpful in the transition at all. Ultimately, they lost those special contracts, the MBE, DBE contracts, and ultimately had to close their business.
And when you think about it, that started to disrupt the legacy of the individual that passed away, but it also messed with the legacy of the other business partners. The other thing that happens to businesses that you don't always think about is that disability. And, what happens if you become incapacitated? And just one simple example of how that can impact your business. Actually, there's a business owner I know who fell ill and quickly became incapacitated, as we've all had those people in our lives that maybe COVID has impacted, where out of the blue, they were fine one day, got sick, and 2 days later, they're on a ventilator. And this is exactly what happened to him. And, here his wife, who had very little to do with the business, is really concerned about him, but she's also worried about the business because that's her livelihood. That's what keeps the family going. And so she's reaching out, talking to the managers of the business, trying to figure out what to do. But she soon discovered they had one major problem they didn't know how they were going to overcome, which is the fact that he was the only signatory on the checking account. And by being the only signatory with nobody else on it, there was no power of attorney in place, and that the wife had no rights to the business, that they found it that they couldn't write checks. They couldn't write checks for payroll. They couldn't write checks for their suppliers. They couldn't fund anything that they needed to do to run their business on a day-to-day basis. And, the owner was incapacitated for 3 weeks. And had he, it's horrible to say, had he passed away, it would have been a lot easier, because that then starts to transfer over into a trust and into an estate, and that the wife would then have the ability to write checks. But this is a piece that a lot of business owners don't realize, is that access to cash is limited if it's not designated to be done the way that you want it to be done in a case of disability. The good news is that the man that I'm talking about actually recovered, and they were quickly able to get back on their feet. But had it realistically lasted another week or 2 of him being incapacitated, their business would have been gone, his whole legacy gone. And, that what he had worked for was no longer there. The third one doesn't really need much of an explanation, which is disaster. One could classify this last year as a disaster for many businesses. And, while I'm not sure we would have anticipated the experiences that we went through, there's always a need for a disaster plan, and not just a disaster recovery plan for your business, but a disaster plan for what happens if. I'll share one other quick story, is that there was a company that another financial advisor told me about 4 gentlemen that lived up in the Northeast. They were in Michigan. And what they didn't anticipate is that when COVID hit, they had, each of them were their backup plans, right? That, there's no way all 4 of them are going to get sick at one time. Well, all 4 of them went to the same meeting. All 4 of them got sick at the same time, and all 4 of them became incapacitated because it hit them really hard. And that business, once again, almost died because of that. Not that you can anticipate it, but those are the things that really can happen that can disrupt your business.
Another one that I see often, Linda, is divorce. Unfortunately, there's a story that I have of a client that had kind of loose partnership agreements. They had non-traditional payroll practices, air quotes, if you can see those, leaving the other partner exposed. And actually his financial statements and records were subject to discovery in his partner's divorce proceedings, resulting in quite a few long-term issues, as you can imagine, in that particular relationship.
You know, and we already mentioned that the fact that Carla was impacted by divorce and that a portion of her assets, including her retirement assets, were actually taken away from her.
That's
And
right.
the last one is disagreement, you know, and I've had my own experience in this area. You know, when I first started Execuity, I partnered with another person, fantastic woman, still have a ton of respect for her. But as we grew the business, we realized we wanted different things from it. We had different ideas, we had different tolerances for risk, and we ended up parting. The good news is we parted amicably. We're still friends and, you know, still call, you know, talk to each other periodically. But that splitting up can be really, really hard. It's comparable to a divorce. And if you don't think about what that looks like, and this is where, you know, an attorney is really important on those buy-sell agreements, is to lay out what does that look like. And to Shanda's point earlier about the divorce, what happens in that case? You know, one of the questions somebody posed to me, which is when you're looking at a partner, do you want to do business with their spouse? And if the answer is no, then you need to make sure you have a really good buy-sell agreement, because there is a chance that through a disagreement, through a divorce, through any of these things we talked about, you could be doing business with that spouse.
None of these things are very pleasant to talk about. And I know when I bring them up with clients, it's always hard to get them to move forward with planning for them. But the reality is a successful, strong business can crumble due to lack of preparation around these areas. If forced into a transaction for any of these reasons, the value of your business will be nowhere near what you think it is, as you lost negotiating power. Another risk to total world domination is personal preparation and retirement planning. Nearly 37% of business owners have no retirement savings, and even more have no idea what it would take for them to live their desired lifestyle in retirement. Let's jump back to Carla really quickly. As a result of COVID, Carla has been thinking a lot about where she is. Does she want to return to a 60 hours a week work after COVID? Where's all her money? Her business has grown, but her wealth has not. What happens if she loses a large client? What happens if all of her projects in her pipeline happen? She'll need more talent. She'll need to onboard people. That means she needs to start hiring now. How does she hit her growth goals? What happens to her business if she happens to end up on a ventilator for 20 days? What happens to her business if she never gets off that ventilator? What happens to her daughter? What does Act 2 actually look like for her? Will she have enough money for tuition? Does she have enough money for herself? If you're anything like Carla, if you're anything like me, these things keep you up at night. And so what I like to do is come up with a plan. Step 2, let's take inventory of where Carla is today. If you've never done a personal net worth statement, I want to walk you through that today. If you need a template, we have one that we can share with you later as well. So your personal net worth statement is just a snapshot of your worth at any given point in time. On your assets, you're going to list your cash, investments, real estate, cars, your business. What you'll see here is that we just have $1 as a placeholder for Carla's construction company, because we're going to talk a little bit more about that valuation later. On the liability side, you list your mortgage, credit cards, any home equity lines of credit or anything like that. I like to use your net worth statement as a you are here marker on the map. But you should also look at the type of assets and liabilities on your balance sheet to determine the overall health of your net worth. Do you have cash versus investments? Cash is great, it's the most liquid, but investments also help you grow and build that wealth. Do you have credit card debt versus home equity? With unsecured debt, that's not the healthiest and obviously more expensive debt to carry. And both of these things have an impact on your ability to borrow for your business. In commercial banking, we use risk ratings to determine whether or not you're eligible for a loan and what interest rates you can borrow at. That risk rating is generated by looking at your business, but that also takes into account your personal net worth and the composition of it. How liquid are you? How quickly can you access cash if necessary? And then also, how leveraged are you on the debt side, and what does that leverage consist of? Do you have the ability to borrow unsecured in an emergency? And that's what your personal net worth statement will show you. For Carla, her personal net worth is a little under $345,000, creating a great base for her goals. The third thing we do when connecting with clients is try to figure out the gap between where they are today and where they want to be. So if you'll see here, we'll start with the column to the right, which shows what she'll need to accomplish her lifestyle. What total world domination will cost her. And that's about $1.9 million, which includes about $50,000 to fund a new business, another $180,000 to cover the tuition costs for her youngest child, and then about $1.4 million in retirement expenses. And what that is about a retirement annual spending of $150,000 with adjustments made for Social Security. In the column to the left, you see where she is today with her current her current net worth of $345,000. I always recommend to business owners that they're actively saving before the exit. And so a quick recommendation that I made for Carla was to start saving this year $1,000 a month. And what you'll see is from now through retirement, that adds about another $200,000 to her overall assets. Carla expects to sell her business to cover the gap between where she is today and where she wants to be. Is she right? Before we jump into that, let me share with you a couple of the recommendations that I would make for someone like Carla. And the first is what I hinted on already. Start saving today. I showed you what happens with Carla if she just saves $1,000 a month and allows that to build. But Carla should consider her retirement savings. Does she already have an established retirement account? If so, should she be increasing or contributing to that account? If she doesn't have it, she should set one up. It's hard to determine which one that is very quickly, but you want to connect with the financial advisor or a CPA to better determine which vehicles make sense for you. Is that a 401k? Is that a solo 401k? Is that a defined benefit plan, or the various types of IRAs available? Over the last 15 to 20 years, I'll say that we've all tried to make investing and saving for retirement a lot easier for clients and business owners. So a lot of these things are available to you, even if you're a sole practitioner. The other thing that I like to do, that I like to recommend for clients, especially when you think about borrowing and you think about the risk ratings and interest rates, the relationship between those two that I just described before, is to create a wealth builder account. Create that liquidity. Create a taxable investment account that will treat like a 401k, where you'll make small incremental contributions over time with a long-term investment strategy. If you're not sure where to start, I want you to consider this interesting fact that I borrowed from our colleagues over at the Wealth Edit. If you did not spend $68.50 a day, which to me amounts to the 3 Amazon boxes on my steps right now, you would save about $25,000 in a year, which makes me feel bad about my Amazon boxes right now. I also would talk to Carla about her estate planning topics. Does she have a trust and a will in place? Powers of attorney for times when she may or may not be incapacitated, short, long term, the buy-sell agreements, and any other succession planning documents that she would need for her company. The final and most important thing that I would do for Carla is I would introduce her to a value advisor. Because unlike many other business owners, the elephant in the room, the elephant on her net worth statement, is the value of her company.
So as Shanda shared on Carla's example, she's banking on that value of her business. And it's estimated that 70% of a business owner's wealth is actually tied up in their business. But here's the bigger kicker. 98% of business owners have no idea what their business is worth. You know, for business owners, a lot of times you think, well, that's reserved for those big businesses out there. Doing a business valuation is going to cost me thousands and thousands of dollars, and I don't have that to spend. I'd much rather put that back into my business because I'll see a bigger ROI. But the reality is it doesn't have to be that difficult, and it doesn't have to be that expensive. So in the case of Carla, you know, she had an idea of what her business is worth. Now, who here hasn't watched Shark Tank? And when you're watching Shark Tank, you can learn lots of great business lessons, or The Profit is another one of my favorites. And when they go through these different situations and you look at the valuation some of these businesses are getting, you know, Carla started thinking, wow, these businesses don't have as much longevity as I. They don't have a proven track record. They've barely gotten off the ground. I've got an established $2 million business. My business has to be worth at least as much, if not more than what their businesses are when I look at it through the eyes of Shark Tank. The second thing is she had a friend who actually sold their company recently, who was just living, you know, high on the horse, that they had sold their business for 7 times EBITDA. Now, first thing she had to remember and clarify is EBITDA. What does that mean? Because she wasn't that familiar with the term, which EBITDA basically means net profit. And so she's like, net profit. My net profit's around $200,000 a year. And you know what? With that $200,000 a year, if I even cut back that EBITDA multiplier and I say maybe it's 5 times EBITDA, well, wow, that makes me feel pretty good because my business must be worth about $1 million. And so she thought to herself, well, okay, $1 million, I can make Act 2 happen with that. I can put my daughter through college. I'll help fill in the gap. You know, Act 2, I'm going to build that business so I can make some money. But the big question is, was she right on her estimations? And that's when a friend suggested she get a valuation. So there's lots of different methods out there for doing evaluation. Actually, I have 2 tools that I use to help do business evaluations. One is the Value Bidder Assessment, and the other one is called Execuity. The Value Bidder Assessment is always a good place to start because, one, it only takes 15 minutes to fill out. It works best for companies over $500,000. It's complimentary. It's something that every business owner can do. And it's based upon data over about 55,000 businesses. And it looks at the value of your business through the lens of a buyer. And that's the important thing. It's not just about revenue and EBITDA. It's about what is that buyer looking for. And there's 8 key value drivers that's going to influence what your business is worth. You know, the first one's the obvious, which is financial performance. But even when you look at financial performance, it also includes how do you keep track of your accounts? How do you do your accounting, your bookkeeping? Do you have audited financial statements, or at the very least, you have a CPA who goes and may not write you a signed off audit, but will actually go through and make sure your things are kind of put in there in the right way. It's also about growth potential. You know, an investor is not coming in just to buy your business for the sake of buying your business. They're buying it because they see future growth opportunities. They're not just buying it because they think they can keep it at $2 million. They want to take that 2 million and turn it into 4 million. They also look at what we call the Switzerland structure. And that's really about client concentration, employee dependence, and supplier dependence. You know, you look at COVID really has tested supplier dependence for a lot of companies. There's companies that have gone out of business because they were relying on one supplier, and that one supplier couldn't survive. So it became the domino effect impacting their business, where their business failed and they didn't have a backup plan in place. There's also the valuation teeter-totter, which is all about cash flow. A business needs cash, and a business owner, you know, in my opinion, needs to be maniacal about their cash, knowing what's coming in, what's going out, and knowing what they need to run their business. There's also this idea of recurring revenue. And this is something that a lot of businesses don't think about, which is if you can get your business driving recurring revenue on a regular basis to where you've got sustainable long-term contracts in place, it immediately increases the value of your business dramatically. And there are creative ways to think about it. And a lot of people don't think their business actually fits in this model, but you'd be surprised on how you can create recurring revenue models with even within most businesses. You know, in Carla's example, it could be that she's going back and doing a recurring audit on some of the construction projects she has. She may be doing some, you know, creating these certifications for construction project management that requires, the construction companies can come and subscribe, or content, those kinds of things. The other piece is monopoly control. How much of the market do you own, or do you have a differentiator or not? Because, if you're doing business just like everybody else, and you may be building it through your network, but if there's no reason to stay with you versus the guy down the street, what happens if you leave? That means that business may not be there anymore because it's very reliant on you. Customer satisfaction is a huge piece of this as well. And for a lot of small business owners, you kind of judge your business by gut reaction. I think my customers are happy. They stay with me for a long time. They never tell me anything's wrong. But when's the last time you actually reached out to them and did a net promoter score, or actually asked them independently without your involvement what they think about your business? And one of the biggest litmus tests, to judge a business's customer satisfaction is, would you recommend my services to someone else? And that's really what the net promoter score is based upon. And then the last, probably the most important, both for the buyer and the seller, is this whole idea of hub and spoke, which is how dependent is the business on you for performance? Do you maintain all of the relationships with the clients? Are you the one that's doing all of the sales? Are you the one that's doing all the marketing? If that's the case, your value immediately goes down, because they're planning on running that business without you at some point. And if it's completely dependent upon you, then the value goes down. The other piece is you're limited in your freedom. And this is what Carla and other business owners have discovered over the last year, is that the business is so dependent upon them that they cannot not stop working. They can't walk away for a month. They sometimes can't even walk away for 2 days without actually being concerned about how their business runs. And so that's part of what this assessment does, is begin to hone in on those areas where you've got the biggest opportunities for improvement. So you kind of get down to that valuation piece. And once again, clarifying, some of the tools I use are just that. They're estimations of values. They're not true business valuations that you would use for tax purposes, or you'd use to defend in a divorce decree or things like that. It really is about giving a business owner a range to think about. And it's based upon multiple transactions. It's also takes into consideration the area of focus, the type of business that you have, looking at your NACES codes. And it looks at not just the hard financial numbers, but the soft numbers and the soft risks that kind of come with running a business. Now, there's a couple of important things that I always like to point out to business owners, is that if you score really high on one end, the multipliers go far beyond what you'll see on this graph, because when you're scoring at the high end, you can go out and kind of play your own game, which is you can go out and find a strategic buyer and bring in them a lot more value than what would show up on any of these charts. The second thing is, if you've got really low scores, the hard part to realize is your business may not be worth anything at the end of the day. And so you're just working to pull the money off of it that you can right now. The other last piece is when it comes to net proceeds. When you sell $1 million business and you get the price you want for $1 million business, there's a lot of things that come off of that $1 million. First of all, on your balance sheet, you have to take out, businesses are sold debt-free and cash-free. So if you've got $100,000 cash, but you got $300,000 worth of debt, then basically that $200,000 comes off the purchase price right off the bat, because there's $200,000 worth of debt that's going to have to get paid off. And that comes out of the proceeds when you sell your business. So when you start to look at that, you look at your broker fees, you look at your taxes. And this is one thing, Sarah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, is tax planning, and all of this is incredibly important, which we didn't really talk about here. But you can be netting out that you sell a business for $1 million, and you're lucky if you have $300,000 at the end of the day. So in Carla's case, it was time for the big reveal, right? She thinks her business is worth anywhere between $1 and $2 million. But this is what she finds out. Her business is only worth less than $400,000 at where it sits today. And, even if she gets it up to a higher end, it's only be worth about $514,000. Now, I show you this example, particularly in construction, because it is driven by the fact that it's in the construction industry. And the part that was kind of funny about this one is that this was actually somewhat of an example of one of the clients that Shanda and I began to work on from the very beginning, which was when we first did this, I went out and paid all this money on this tool, trying to figure out how to use it. And I go around my first valuation and this is what I get. And I'm thinking, there's no way it can be right that this person's business is only worth 2.5 times EBITDA on the good end of it. And so I was like freaked out because I'm like, how am I going to show this to Shanda? All my credibility is going to be hit. And so I ran out there and I really started researching, looking at other value assessment tools. And I realized that the industry that you're in and how you position yourself in that industry will have a huge impact on the value of your business. You know, it can go from something like this in construction is known for having low multipliers, mainly because it's a project-based business. You move from one project to the next project to the next project. And so that reliance on recurring revenue and consistent revenue isn't there, thus creating that lower multiple. But you look at other businesses like software as a service, you're looking at, sometimes on that, you're looking at, 7, 10 times EBITDA, or you're maybe even looking like a multiplier on your revenue versus on your profits. So it really is important that you understand what category you fall in, and also what categories are actually worth more, because they may be categories that are just a tad bit off from what you're doing, that if you were able to position yourself that way could increase the value of your business significantly. So, Carla's here and this is what she's got. And so obviously when you saw earlier, she's got a big gap to fill. She needed $1.5 million to fill that gap. And right now she's finding out I only got 1/3 of what I thought it would have. So what does she do? Well, this obviously just opened her eyes up completely, and she was disappointed, but at the same time, she got mad enough to get her passion going about her business. And this became the impetus for her to start driving changes. And the one thing is she actually had a roadmap for how she needed to get there. She had ideas on whether she could do a potential acquisition. She was thinking about how could she pivot her business maybe into a little bit different category. Maybe she can create recurring revenue through a training program. But the best thing she's done so far is she has gotten better understanding of where she is, where she has to go, and she started to build out the team of advisors to help her get there. She's operating in a world of reality, which is a place where business owners really need to get when they start to think about their exit planning or their chapter 2. So the big thing is, as you kind of go into this, is what do you do? And what are the recommendations for you guys?
And I think what Carla's case really shows us is that asking that question, what do you do, should start very early on. And it shouldn't be a one and done thing, but it's something that you should kind of take a look at on a regular basis. So the first thing that we recommend that you do is really to dream often about what total world domination means to you. What does it look like for you to run your business successfully, to have your personal life and your finances all working together towards that goal? Take inventory of where you are currently. Do that often so that you know what that gap is. Know the value of your business. That's something that you should take a look at annually as well, and understand the triggers and the levers to pull to increase that value. And again, understand your gaps. Where are you? Where are you trying to go? And what does it cost to get you there? And the most important thing is to build an advisory board. Each business owner should have a board of advisors that consist of your banker, financial advisor, a CPA, an attorney, a value advisor. And then most importantly, you should connect with business owners as well in similar industries, similar space, maybe a similar length and time, just so that they can provide you some real life experience and answers and antidotes to help you as you're making decisions and transitions through the process.
So with all of that in mind, this is where Shanda and I have been working together to create this whole idea of wealth empowerment state of mind. And so we actually have a Facebook group out there that you're welcome to join. And it's simply that, wealth empowerment state of mind. And it's a place where business owners or aspiring business owners can come just to get general advice. It's just meant to be kind of an interactive platform just to throw out ideas. It's a place where we'll post articles about these very topics, share inspiring stories. And if you haven't checked it out, I just launched a podcast a week ago at the beginning of the year that really talks about this, and it tells the stories from the actual business owners of how they got to where they are, the challenges they ran into along the way, the triumphs that they've had, and really in the hopes that it inspires other business owners and recognizing the fact that you're not in it alone. And what you're going through is something that somebody else has gone through as well. And guess what? They made it through it. So we'd love for you to join that group. And lastly, here's our contact information. If there's anything that we can do to help, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to. We work independently, but we also work together. So if you have a financial planner you already work with, that's okay. If you already have somebody else that's doing business advisory services, that's okay. We want to make it to where we're able to provide a solution for different business owners, regardless of where they're at. And if we can't help you, that's one of the biggest concepts of a SEPA certification. If we can't help you, we're going to find somebody else who can. So feel free to reach out. Do we have any questions?
I do have one comment in the chat from Vanessa. Vanessa, did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I didn't know how y'all wanted to.
Yeah.
Linda, maybe let's go back. Linda, let's go back to their faces so we can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We can see.
We can see.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
No, I just was saying, I think my biggest issue in just listening to all this is how to identify what I want personally and professionally. I'm content with many blessings in my life and grateful for a lot of things that, you know, I might have that others don't. So it's just hard for me not to think beyond that right now mode. And I know, Linda, you know, the challenges I've had, and you're that big thinker. You know, I'm not one to answer that question in an interview, you know, where are you going to be in 5 years? Because I wouldn't be where I'm at, you know, today if I'd been asked that 5 years ago. So thinking 5 years in advance, it just has never been a way I think, and even to brainstorm for myself. You know, if you said, what would you, you know, you guys all said, I'd like to be at the Virgin Islands and all this stuff. It's like, I have a passport that I've never used, and I don't even know geographically some of the things you guys said. You know? I like, you know, feel retarded in this conversation or something, like, you know, level of intelligence. I don't know, but so it's just mind blowing when I get into conversations and hear things like this, because I'm like, how do I do that? You know, I'm a one-man team for the most part. So I don't have that brainstorming of a big board and, you know, where do you want to go? Yeah, it all sounds great. You know, if life lets me happen, and how do I plan for that life? And
well, you know, one of the things too, and Vanessa, you and I've had some of these conversations about some of these things is, you know, even if you don't have a defined vision of where you want to go, the big thing is you want to have freedom and flexibility to be able to do what you want to do at that point in time, right? And freedom and flexibility comes from having, I hate to say it, it's about having money. It's the big part. It's having money, and it's about having time. And that's what's going to drive freedom and flexibility. And so thinking less about what that looks like, if that's not a comfortable place, but start to think about what are the things that would make me feel like I had freedom and flexibility, and take them one step at a time. It doesn't have to be 10 years out. It doesn't have to be 5 years out. It could be the next 90 days. It could be the next year. I mean, one of the things that, you know, we talked about masterminds earlier. One of the things I took out of masterminds was we actually did vision boards. And vision boards are really powerful. I kind of rolled my eyes at it like, oh my gosh, we're going to do it. And Sarah can attest to that. And then we got into this whole cutting out magazines and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is really kind of nailing it down. And I ended up going back and looking at my vision board from last year. Even with all the crap that happened, a lot of those things that I was working toward actually happened. And I'll give you guys a little tip. And this might be something. So I went out on Canva, which Canva I love. If no one else has not discovered it, I love it. And I went and created my own vision board. And what I did is I then printed it off and sent it to Walgreens to have it printed on a board It's got a little easel on it and it sits on my desk so that I can sit there every day and look and say, what is it that I'm going to do this year? And just focus on this year, which I know is going to help me get to where I want to be long term. Does that help?
The other thing that I would add to that, Linda, is that total world domination doesn't have to be a future state, but just thinking about what that looks like for you today and what the tips that we've offered can help you achieve that today. So if that means that you want to have more time to explore a passion, or, for me, I've during COVID just kind of connected with the passion of mine for photography. And so now moving forward, I want to make sure that I have the time and that I build my life so that I have the time to pursue that passion as well. So when I personally look at total world domination, that's what it looks like for me. Giving me the time today to enjoy some of life's pleasure while I'm still building, while I'm still, enjoying the blessings that I have before me.
And something that comes to mind for me is one, super valuable. I have had to reestablish and learn about what my relationship is with money, because it hasn't been a good one. And the reason I bring that up is because my financial advisor is so good in respect to that, because in a lot of ways I'm trying to get out of a scarcity mindset and into an abundant one, because I have zero reason to be financially nervous at all. But it's regardless if I could make another $2 million and I would still mindset, and which gets in the way of me being able to create a vision. And so listening to all of this and watching how, net worth and all, it's just so valuable for someone like myself who has really had to go back in my lineage and explore why I have the relationship I do with money. And I just wanted to share one book that has made the world of difference for me. Is called Happy Money by Ken Honda. It's a bright yellow book. Ken and then Honda, like the car. But it's allowed me to even sit in a conversation like this that you just had, because prior to probably a year ago, I would have been so nervous and so triggered and so worried that I couldn't even hear anything you were saying. And when you got through today, I went, whoa, like I can listen to this now. Like I get it now. Like I understand it because of my relationship with money. So thank you for doing this. This is awesome.
Laura, that one thing that I want to share with you about that, Oprah Winfrey feels the same way about the scarcity. So you're in good company.
Yeah.
She has,
well, it's enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was reading about that. It's something, and it's really based on kind of your first interaction with money, and whatever that first interaction was kind of sets the tone for how you manage and relate to money for most of your adult life. So good for you for doing the work and finding the book. I jotted that down. I'll definitely take a look at it myself.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you bring that up, because as I've been having conversations with all kinds of women from all different parts of the United States with all different types of backgrounds, their perceptions and where they got really are influenced by exactly what Shanda's talking about, is something further back that drives that. It can either drive them, it can stifle them, it can, it can keep them anxious, it can get them excited. And, we're influenced by the way, I think we had done the one thing on diversity, which talked about all those outer circles about what are those things that influence us and those things you don't think about. And diversity comes from the way we were raised. And that really does influence the way you look at money. And then women, for whatever reason, I mean, I could list off stats that would have you kind of turn into your stomach about how different women view wealth and how lack of control women have over their wealth. And the irony being that when they can control their wealth and they take an active role in it, they do immensely better than men.
Yep.
Women make better investors, but women are more likely to hold their cash and not invest. In fact, their assets of most women are 70% cash, meaning that it's in a savings account, drawing you hardly anything at all, versus even going into a CD or going into treasury bonds or going investing in a safe market. And not realizing, because we never were supposed to talk about money. money's not something you talk about. That's what the men talk about.
Mhm.
They got it. They pay the bills. They do all of that stuff. And that's what has to change, is that we got to break this taboo about money and start talking about it. And frankly, taking our piece of it. And as a business owner, taking care of yourself. There are easy ways to take money off the table, and you just have to do it. It's just because if you don't, no one's going to take care of you in the end. The stats on the number of women that are in retirement age that are impoverished right now would just break your heart. And that the number of women that their biggest stress when you get over 70 years of age is money. And you go up to 80, it gets even more heartbreaking. And we live longer, yet we don't do enough to take care of our legacy and our financial piece of our lives. And it's got to change, and it's not going to change because of us. And that's part of the reason why we're also collaborating with a lot of other groups who mentioned the Wealth Edit. That's a great place, Laura, for you to maybe check out, because they take a really different approach. They actually look at your persona. They have these little different personas that are based upon how you were raised or kind of your perception of money. And they actually have collaborative groups and content that will help you work through some of those issues. And what we're hoping for and what we're doing is we create a forum where people can say, I did it, right? Or I changed my perception, or I'm struggling with this. Where can I go? Does anybody else have this problem? Can you help me with it? And kind of creating this community to help support that.
Well, Linda and Shanda, I really appreciate both of you coming on and talking about this. This is a topic that we need to continue. As you all mentioned, women view money differently. We always have. It's changing. It's evolving. The more power and the more confident that women become, we realize that we have to take control of our own financial journey. So this conversation is just huge. And I think that the way we view money and the way we view wealth, it dictates how we live our lives, how we run our businesses, how we save. Everything that we want out of life is affected by our view of money and our view of scarcity versus, just assets in general in the world. So, and one thing I'll add to Vanessa's question, I think she jumped off, but one thing that's so important is to have a business coach or a life coach to add to the list that Shanda went through of all of your professionals. You should have those people in your life because they're so important, and they will help you figure out, where do I want to be at the end of my life? What do I want it to look like? And how do I get there? And it's changed my life doing those things, and I'm still working on it. I've still got a lot more work to do, but I think we need to have more of these conversations, and I really appreciate you guys coming on today. And I appreciate everyone who participated today. We're over time. So Linda and Shanda, are there anything else you guys want to say?
No, actually, I'm late for a client call. Yeah. So I gotta go. So thank you guys for letting me do this and indulging this.
Thank you for welcoming me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Great one.